Hi, I'm Saraya Mia, and you are watching AWANI Tonight. We explore gaps in the anti-hopping bill passed by Parliament yesterday. And in legalizing medical cannabis, can you differentiate hemp from marijuana? More on that coming up. Continuous rain has resulted in another round of flash floods in BALING. In response, Penang has put its main water treatment plant on high alert as floods threaten to disrupt water supply in the state. 2 villages in BALING were hit with flash floods yesterday following a downpour in the afternoon. 19 families have been evacuated to a temporary relief center. Nearly 80% of Penang's tap water is sourced from Sungai Muda, which flows from 2 other rivers upstream of BALING. When floods hit BALING earlier this month, the Sungai Dua water treatment plant in Butterworth was shut down, resulting in disrupted water supply for at least 3 days. Foreign Minister Datuk Sri Saifuddin Abdullah says that he is pushing for a framework for Myanmar with an endgame. Discussions on the matter involved UN Secretary General's Special Envoy on Myanmar, Dr. Noslin Hazer. Saifuddin said in a social media post today that ASEAN needs to have a framework that has an endgame without missing out steps required to achieving it. He highlighted that ASEAN needs access to accurate and up-to-date information about what is actually happening by both sides of the party. This is followed by an inclusive and fair consultation by all key stakeholders. Others discussed, he said, were the ASEAN 5-point consensus, distribution of humanitarian aid, and education for refugees. Saifuddin reiterated that there has not been progress on the 5-point consensus as violence continues to rage in neighboring Myanmar. He said ahead of the ASEAN summit in November, other ASEAN leaders must make a big decision whether to continue it, improve it, or come up with a better solution. In other news, the total national population in 2022 is estimated at 32.7 million as compared to 32.6 million last year. A report by the Statistics Department revealed that males outnumbered females this year.
The gender ratio for the overall population currently stands at 109 males for every 100 females. The number of senior citizens also continued on an upward trend, with the population of those aged 65 and over rising from 7% to 7.3%. The country's median age has also increased from 30.1 years to 30.4. In terms of ethnicity, the composition of Bumiputra citizens increased by 0.3%, while the composition of Chinese and Indians decreased by 0.2% and 0.1% respectively.
The Registrar of Societies has approved UMNO's application to amend its constitution to postpone its party polls. UMNO Secretary General Datuk Sri Ahmad Mazlan says the party polls must not be held later than 6 months after the 15th general election. The approval comes into effect today. On May 17th, the party requested for the ROS to postpone its leadership polls after its General Assembly agreed to do so in order to focus on GE15. Pakatan Harapan urges Prime Minister Datuk Sri Ismail Sabri Yaakob to fulfill 3 more pledges promised under the Memorandum of Understanding, or MOU. They are limiting the tenure of the Prime Minister to less than 10 years, reviving the Parliamentary Services Act, and amending the Parliament Standing Orders. After the passing of the historic anti-hopping bill yesterday, PH's Presidential Council said 15 out of 18 pledges in the MOU have been implemented. This is equivalent to 83.3%. The Council also took note of the Prime Minister's statement 2 days ago that a new MOU will not be signed. The agreement signed on September 13, 2021 will be in force until Parliament is dissolved. 2 days ago, Ismail Sabri said he intended to introduce more reforms that were not outlined in the MOU. However, he said there was an understanding on these matters between him and the opposition. Previously, there was widespread misinformation that the MOU would expire on July 31st. Instead, both Ismail Sabri and Harapan agreed in the MOU that Parliament should not be dissolved before July 31st. The long-awaited anti-hopping bill was unanimously passed in the Dewan Rakyat yesterday. However, there are still some gaps that need to be addressed in future amendments. Ira Azhari from the Institute for Democracy and Economic Affairs discusses remaining issues surrounding the bill.
Firstly, I think one of the problems that the bill does not address is what happens when an entire party pulls out of a coalition. So this is what happened during the Sheraton move in 2020, when one of the parties in the coalition left, and then the Prime Minister resigned. So the current constitutional amendments do not cover situations like that. I'm not sure how a law can actually address a problem or a situation like the Sheraton move, because currently it only covers individual MPs who switch parties in between election periods, right? So I think that is one loophole that I think is a bit difficult to regulate.
Ira adds that it's important to consider recall elections as another mechanism to be put in place in the spirit of democracy and upholding the people's votes.
And secondly, I think it's important to remember that, you know, at the end of the day, the more democratic alternative to controlling something like party hopping is actually to have a recall election mechanism where you return the decision to the voters in the constituencies to make the decision whether they can, or whether they support or they oppose their MP's decision to switch parties, right? How the anti-hopping law is being debated on at the moment is that that kind of the authority to decide whether or not the MP loses their seat, you know, comes from the legislation rather than the people's will.
Now that the bill has gotten the nod from the Dewan Rakyat, many are hopeful it will help with Malaysia's political stability. To strengthen this, Ira outlines other matters that must be looked into.
I mean, this anti-party hopping law is a very important first step, but I hope that it will open doors to more institutional reforms that our country greatly needs. Political financing is one thing that is still not regulated in Malaysia. And we all know that a big reason why MPs switch sides is because of money, right? So how do we control money politics? So we need transparency in how political parties are being funded. So we need a political financing act. We need a parliamentary system that functions and, you know, is independent and is able to make, you know, has less autonomy to make its own decisions. So we need a Parliamentary Services Act. Yeah, and you know, there are many other things, reforming the Attorney General's chambers, for example, to ensure there's no selective prosecution. So I hope that this opens doors to all of these other reforms that we really need.
Time for a quick break. We'll be right back. Welcome back. There's been much talk about the use of medical cannabis in Malaysia, but the terms cannabis, marijuana, and hemp are often used interchangeably in public debate. What is the actual difference? Dr. Nur Azalia Kamaruzaman from the National Poison Center explains the distinction.
So if you want to kind of imagine it, cannabis is at the top and it's divided into two, which are hemp and marijuana. right? So the two important cannabinoids are natural compounds produced by the plants, are actually two: THC, tetrahydrocannabinol, and CBD, cannabidiol. Now, THC is very much well known for a psychoactive compound, right? It is mind-altering, it causes euphoria, it is usually connected to the high feeling that you usually associate with ganja or marijuana, all right? So you have THC. Now, CBD does not have the psychoactive properties, and it has a lot of therapeutic potential. So that is what people are usually focused on when they talk about medical cannabis. Now, hemp has less than 0.3% of THC, meaning it has rather negligible psychoactive properties. So no matter how much you smoke hemp, you don't get high. While marijuana and hemp share the same species, they are actually legally and chemically distinct. So if you have less than 0.3, so 0.3% is the cutoff point. If you are above it, then you're known as marijuana. And in most countries, they are illegal because they are no longer considered as medical cannabis. But if they are 0.3% and below, then they're considered as hemp.
Now, the Health Ministry has said a framework will soon be announced to enable CBD products to be registered by 2023. In line with this, USM's Dr. Noor Azalia Kamaruzaman stresses the importance of researching cannabis for medical use.
So when it talks about cannabis, I do believe that it is equally important for us to understand it. We have heard various anecdotal reports, testimonial, people talking about their own experiences, and they have been good, sure. But I still believe that it requires rigorous research. We need comprehensive safety and efficacy data.
According to Azalia, cannabis has shown to have therapeutic effects which some conventional medicine cannot provide.
If you have the opportunity to save lives, to cure diseases, then why aren't we taking up the opportunity, right? If you can, there are a lot of untold and told cases in Malaysia. You don't even have to go far of people resorting to illegal cannabis for their family members or even for themselves. So the thing with cannabis is we shouldn't hold back on the possibility of research, and it could be a game changer and a lifesaver.
On to international news. Philippine authorities today airlifted supplies to areas cut off since a powerful earthquake hit the main island of Luzon this week. Residents pleaded for food and temporary shelter 2 days after the 7.1 magnitude quake struck. The military deployed personnel and helicopters to distribute relief goods to 7 isolated towns in Abra province. They said around 3,000 food packs were airlifted to the communities. Residents still in fear of aftershocks were camping out in parks and open spaces in some areas. Power knocked out in Abra's Buklok town until yesterday evening as residents fear more landslides. The earthquake killed 6 people and injured over 270, damaging at least 1,600 homes and hundreds of infrastructure. Wednesday's earthquake also saw over 1,000 aftershocks with a magnitude ranging from 1.5 to 5.4. Meanwhile, one of the 2 dancers injured during a concert by popular Hong Kong boy band Mirror remains in serious condition. Organizers say they will axe the remaining concerts in the 12th show run following government intervention. Footage of the incident that circulated online showed a group of dancers performing on stage at the Hong Kong Coliseum when a giant overhead video screen fell and crushed a man. The screen then toppled onto at least 1 other person before the remaining performers rushed to help. The accident, which left at least 5 injured, happened around 10:30 p.m. on Thursday. Health authorities said 1 man with a neck injury was in serious condition, while another was stable after sustaining a head injury. According to reports, one of the 2 metal cords suspending a massive screen snapped during the concert, causing the structure to crash onto the stage. Ahead of World Day Against Trafficking in Persons, we speak to our guests about Putrajaya's efforts in combating human trafficking, migrant smuggling, and forced labor crimes. This as Malaysia remains at the lowest rank of the latest TIP report. That's coming up on Consider This. That's all we have for you on AWANI tonight. My name is Saraya Mia. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you again.